Being focused is one of the most important things in life. Under no circumstances should you ever lose your concentration, especially if you've got hundreds, if not thousands of eyeballs watching you live all at once. Unfortunately, when victory is closer than ever, not everyone acts accordingly. Today, I'm going to show you the stories of people who started to celebrate too early and lost at the last second. Ready to see them? Let's get it on! In a high-stakes sport like MotoGP, where you're probably at least a little bit excited to still be alive when you cross the finish line, it's not surprising people want to start celebrating early. But a lap early might be a bit much. This racer thought he'd won when he slowed down and started happily enjoying his victory, but his opponents knew it wasn't over. He seems almost confused as to why they're all flying past him at breakneck speeds, but you can't win a race without being competitive. So instead of accepting his opponents are right, he just celebrates harder to prove he'd won. When he finally had to accept his fate and put his head in his hands, presumably to hide his face in shame, it was way too late to get back to anywhere near the lead. He ended up finishing in only 14th place. Sometimes it's worth listening to your competitors. Running requires many impressive skills, but you probably wouldn't imagine that counting was one of them. This former world champion learned that the hard way though. This 5,000-meter race saw him make incredible time and pull out way into the lead, almost certainly to take the gold, except that it was one lap too early. He had miscounted and thought he was on his final lap when he crossed the finish line and pumped his fist. He made the huge mistake of jogging off the track to celebrate before he saw his closest competitor sprint past him at an impressive speed. Of course, he quickly returned to the race, but he'd realized his mistake way too late, and of course he'd burnt all his energy sprinting amazingly fast for the win in the last lap. That little mistake in celebration didn't only cost him the lead, but almost the whole scoreboard, and he finished in only 10th place. I wouldn't be surprised to see him doing an extra lap just in case in the future. It only makes sense that champions want to celebrate when they're on a high, but this MotoX competitor may have taken that just a little bit too literally. She had an amazing race and was way out in the lead, so she took a moment to pump her fist in celebration of her soon-to-be win while at the peak of an impressive jump. Unfortunately, she's made a tiny mistake, which she could have corrected if only she hadn't taken her hand off the throttle. She didn't have the time to correct the mistake before her bike landed nose down and crashed, giving her almost thoroughly beaten opponents to take the lead. Just remember, your opponents are even more inclined to want to beat you if you take a moment to rub their noses in your lead, so always save your celebrations for after you've crossed the finish line if you want to avoid tears.
That escalated quickly.
It's never good to be a sore loser. Even if you make a mistake, accept it with grace and move on, and never ever throw a tantrum or you could end up like this guy. Sure, it's understandable that he would be frustrated with just missing like that, but flinging his golf club around in anger wasn't a good idea. That's a pretty humiliating outcome for a really small mistake, especially for a champion golfer. I guess at least he had something to really lose his temper about after that minor disaster. We all know the cold touch of defeat, and if you're a Braves fan, you'll be more familiar with the freeze. He's the sprinter in the superhero costume who likes to race fans in between innings at their games. He's impressively tough to beat and often leaves even pretty good runners trailing behind him, despite them having a really large head start on him. The worst thing you can do is believe you've won before actually crossing the finish line, because just when you least expect it, he could overtake you. That's not even the first time this has happened, because of course that's not the first time a fan made the horrible mistake of celebrating just a little too early. You know you were just a little too confident if your opponent overtaking you makes you fall over in shock. These defeats really do give a whole new meaning to the phrase, leave them in the dust. It's important to keep your eyes open even when you're just walking around, so it's especially important when you're in the middle of a cycling race. And please, make sure that the line you just cycled over was actually the finish line before you start celebrating. That's the mistake this poor cyclist made. Yes, she crossed a line painted on the road, but it wasn't the big one. Before she realized though, she stopped pedaling and threw her arms in the air in joyous celebration, and her opponent took the opportunity to overtake her and snatch the victory she thought she already had from her grasp. If it were me, I'm not sure losing the race would have been the worst part of that though. It must have been seriously embarrassing making such a big mistake in front of all those people. Even the kid looks disapproving. We're usually advocates for the sentiment go big or go home. That's probably not true if what you're going big on is a premature celebration. This World Series poker player knows that now. He went all out in celebration of a $1 million win and made sure to seriously rub his win in his opponent's face, shouting, prancing around, ripping off his cardigan and throwing it on the floor, which to start with is an odd choice of clothing if that's what you're going to be doing. But that wasn't the big problem with his huge private party. The real mistake was that he chose to celebrate before the final card was dealt. But to be fair, there was only one card that could lead to a win for his opponent. Never forget karma is swift. And if you're going to celebrate like a rude child for a full minute before knowing the outcome, you're going to regret it. Sometimes you catch yourself doing something really amazing. And when that happens, it can be difficult to not immediately start jumping for joy, but it might be in your best interest to hold off for a moment. This budding tennis star found himself battling through a really tough rally to win a point. He was playing expertly, possibly even surprising himself, especially when he managed to return the ball at a particularly difficult moment. He thought he'd won it, but his opponent felt otherwise. Sure, it was a difficult shot for his opponent to get, but he did it anyway, and all while the young player's back was turned in celebration of his amazing not winning point. At least now he knows you can't let your guard down even for a moment. He probably won't be making that mistake again in a hurry. Being a great sportsman doesn't only take physical prowess, but a specific dedicated mental state as well. That's definitely what was needed in this heart-pounding cyclocross race, where we see the man who should have been the winner accidentally think he'd crossed the finish line when he still had a whole lap to go. Not only did he make that mistake, but it took him ages to realize that everyone else was still racing. When he finally recognized his mistake, he'd been overtaken by many of his most dangerous competitors. On the bright side, he really gave the audience a show to remember, as he slowly but surely pulled back out to the front against some fierce opponents. It was neck and neck, but he'd exhausted himself by sprinting too early and trying to catch up, so he just missed out in the very last moments. At least it was a race for the history books, even though he's probably too disappointed to care. Rule number 1 when doing just about anything is never underestimate your opponents. We think that's what went wrong in this clip at least. Either that or this skater doesn't know there's any such thing as a finish line. He starts celebrating what he probably presumed was a surefire win way before the finish line. Obviously his lead wasn't anywhere near as big as he must have thought it was. If you start skating on one leg with your arms in the air when you're meant to be sprinting, it's like a flashing light to anyone who wants to beat you. His nearest competitor saw the huge gap he'd left and overtook him just before the finish line. He was so sure he'd won, he didn't even notice he'd been beaten until he realized the crowd wasn't cheering with him. It can't be a good feeling when you realize you're celebrating something all on your own, and it really can't be good when you learn it's because you didn't actually win. Boxing is one of those sports that can get a little difficult to follow. Sure, there are times when you can see exactly who's won, but other times it's all in the points, and even the boxers themselves get confused. This match was one of those. It got really close, and in the end, Logan Paul decided to celebrate a victory by pumping his fist in the air. Except the victory wasn't his. KSI was soon announced the victor, which really must have hurt since this was already a rematch. Logan will now insist forever that he'd lost due to a penalty points deduction he wasn't aware of, but still, everyone can see he jumped the gun on this one. Psst, hey, you still there? Well, since you made it this far, here are all the shoutouts we promised everyone that commented on our previous video. If you want to be shouted out in our next upcoming video as well as the ones prior, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel and leave a comment down below saying, "Pick me." Once you're at it, you might as well leave a like too.